Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan. Want to wish everybody happy holidays, Easter, Passover, whatever you observe. Hope you had a great one. It is Sunday night for Adam and I, so it has been for me, I had a nice little in my house family Easter dinner. Adam, I don't know what your did today. I hope you had a good one. Whatever you did, I hope it was fun.
Well, what happened to us is, for the people in Philly, New Jersey, Delaware, on Friday we had a lot of wind, and a very big branch fell in our backyard, and my wife and I started taking the little branches off the big branch and just putting them into a trash can. And then we're gonna have to have
nothing
someone
got damaged, right? No,
nothing. But my wife and I were in our living room, and we both heard it crash. We're like, oh God. And we looked down and we were like, oh, we breathed a sigh of relief. This is Friday afternoon. So that was concerning. You know, it's been a rare winter where not only did we not have to use our snowblower, we got 1/100th of an inch of snow in the past year.
That's crazy.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's really crazy. So anyway, thank goodness it's kind of winter we have, but we're in the spring now. And
right.
Geoff, we're a week and a half away from the draft, man. Can you believe it?
We are. I can believe it. It's crazy. I'm glad we're doing, we're getting closer. This podcast, Adam, as you know, we're going to focus on cornerbacks because you and I have isolated that as a position that we really think the Eagles need to address and probably early, along with
several other teams. Yeah. By the way, several other teams need corners. Yeah. As I've checked, Geoff,
there
are probably 8 or 9 teams that need corners, and you can make a case for, I would say, 5 or 6 teams taking them. Now, I'd had this question, and I get this every year, and I remember Bill Polian telling me, the Hall of Fame general manager, saying, for any draft, there are typically between 12 and 15 players who have first-round grades. The rest of them,
total, yeah,
right, they don't. But the problem is, there are 32 picks.
Right.
So you have to take somebody, and the guys go higher than they normally would. But this cornerback group, Geoff, surprised me. It's a little bit deeper than I expected once I dug in and asking coaches. I'm real big on position coaches, getting their opinion, and also some wide receiver coaches I spoke with who happen to see some of these corners on tape, and they would notice technique. So it's been certainly interesting week and a half or 2 weeks that I've worked on this stuff, and certainly we'll get into that.
Yeah, no, and to bring up another draft point that you and I know, and a lot of our listeners probably have observed over the years, is that I don't know if there's another position other than quarterback where you see the run on so quickly in a draft as corner, because as you mentioned, a lot of teams need, and there isn't always a lot of good ones available. So you always see parts of that draft where like a corner goes and then maybe another one goes right after or 2 picks later, and all of a sudden that kind of starts a run on corners. So you're saying about 7 or 8 teams could use corners. And,
here you go. You ready for it?
You'll probably only have 2 or 3 of this group that are definite, like people would say, are definite first rounders, and then everybody else kind of falls into a different kind of category there.
Washington won't take one because they're going to take Chase Young, but the teams that need a corner, Lions do because of the Darius Slay trade. Now, they like the kid from Penn State who started 2 games. My line source told me they really like him.
Right.
The 5th rounder is probably going to get a chance to start, but they certainly need a corner in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah.
The Panthers do. Remember, James Bradbury's gone. He's now with the Giants.
Sure.
The Jaguars absolutely do. Their 2 starting corners from last year are now gone. The Jets, absolutely. It's a bad need. The number 1 need for the Raiders is cornerback, so they're another team. The Niners could use one. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the first round. The Broncos lost Chris Harris, so they certainly can use one. I mean, I'm not even done half the first round, Geoff.
Well, I mean, that's the kind. It's like pass rushers. Even if you have a good cornerback, you want to. You try.
Right. Good point. As you can. By the way, Eagles do it 21. They're going to go with receiver if the right one's there, but corner would be their second need. Vikings lost Xavier Rhodes. They have 2 first round picks. Seattle Seahawks are absolutely looking for a corner. It doesn't have to be in the first round. They're looking for one.
Didn't the Vikings lose Trey Waynes as well?
They did. Yeah. It
doesn't
have to be in the first round, but they absolutely need a corner. They're real late. You're right. They're late at corner. So Geoff, corner and receiver are probably the 2 heaviest needs when I go through all 32 picks. Some teams obviously have multiple picks in the first round, but it just happens to be the best receiver group we've seen in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit better group at corner than I first imagined.
Sure. And I think the Eagles would love to see a couple of those corners, that corner run happen, mid round of the draft before them to push some of those wide receivers down. That would make it very interesting there where they pick at 21. So we're going to go through, like we did with the receivers, we're going to break up the corners into tiers and give you the homework that we've done talking with scouts, position coaches, and other talent evaluators on this group of cornerbacks. Before we get into that, I want to make an announcement. And that's we're excited to announce it, Adam, that we have a new Facebook page out, and it's something that's been in the works for quite a while now, and we've had some help from some kids who are Temple students who are helping us put it together. So go to Inside the Birds on Facebook. Now you can be a part of the Facebook page, but there's also a group where, and I don't use Facebook a whole lot, Adam. Maybe you use it more than me. I wasn't even aware that this exists, but on top of the page, we have an Inside the Birds Facebook group where all of our listeners or the people who follow the page and get on the page, it's kind of like a community where you can chat about things that have to do with Inside the Birds, things they might hear on our podcast, and just chat away about it. And already people have started. So
over 200.
Direct everybody there.
Yeah, over 200. Our friend Anish David has posted a lot of good questions. I'm looking through it. It's really funny, and I knew this would happen. On Twitter, there's no community. I was someone who was was on the internet news groups in the late 90s, early 2000s. I used to be on them a lot and get into discussions with people. So what happens is this is all that's left. And there are a lot of Facebook groups with Eagle fans. There's one that's got like 17,000 people in it. Ours has just got 200 in 2 days.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I figure we're going to get a couple thousand in the first couple months. So, folks, we really appreciate it. Keep doing it. And I'm going to pop in there when I have time to get into a discussion. But the fact of the matter is, Geoff and I are working, on other stuff right now. But when I have time, I definitely want to pop in. We appreciate it. This is a private group, but it's a group of diehard Eagle fans. I see the questions and the thoughts. It's clear these are high-end Eagle fans. We absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I do want to thank the two Temple students who are doing an internship and who have helped us out in creating the page. Their names are Zane Simpson and Michael Morrissey. They've both done a great job. So
awesome.
We thank Zane a whole lot for all of their work. Not just that, they've also our Instagram page will probably be updated a little bit, and all of our social media platforms. Speaking of social media platform, make sure you head to our YouTube page, because Adam and I, if you haven't seen it yet, we had a great interview with Baylor wideout Denzel Mims earlier in the week. It's on our YouTube page now. It's been available for a few days to see, but if you haven't seen it yet, go to our YouTube page, check out the interview. I thought it was a really good interview. Sounds like a great kid. I think you'd be a good addition here in Philadelphia, and you can see the entire about 20-minute interview on our YouTube page.
Yeah, so real quick, any team, because I know we probably have at least a dozen different teams represented from fans who listen. And here's the deal with Mims. Before the Senior Bowl, he was thought to be a early to mid third round pick. It's pretty much a fallacy that players don't move up draft boards normally. It's just not true. What happens is if a player has a great Senior Bowl and combine, they're going to move up. What happens is teams go back and look at their tape. When it comes to Mims, his workout was so phenomenal at the combine, plus the Senior Bowl was phenomenal. And we hear Denzel explain what happened and why. It's a really enjoyable 20-minute interview we got into now. Yeah. He's fantastic.
At very least, you got to check out what he said about his first visit to Philadelphia.
Oh, to Philly,
I don't mean a visit to the Eagles. I just
exactly.
Time in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that was funny. But to summarize this before we move on, folks, whether it's the Vikings who need speed and size at receiver, Titans, Eagles, Packers, Jets, Lions. By the way, the Lions top three, as one of my followers on Twitter who's a Lions fan said, and I forgot about this, the top three receivers for Lions, all their contracts expire after this season. They don't need a draft. Galladay's not going anywhere. He'll get the franchise tag after the season if they can't get him done. But the fact of the matter is, folks, this is a historic draft. You want to listen to Denzel Mims, who's a high character kid, by the way. Love this interview. His responses to our questions on our discussions were phenomenal. So make sure you go to our YouTube page and check it out.
All right. That's Inside the Birds on YouTube. Also, next podcast drops Thursday morning, 6 a.m., because we are Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m. Next podcast, Greg Cassell is going to join us. We've been talking about that for the last few pods, how much we look forward to getting his insight and his opinion. One of the best tape breakdown guys in the business. He will join us. We'll probably go through some safeties with him as we continue our NFL draft preview, but we'll run the gamut with him and get his kind of
quarterbacks, receivers, offensive line, linebackers, safeties, corners. And Greg Cosell, by the way, it is true. He is the nephew of the late great Howard Cosell.
That is correct. For those who were wondering.
Yes.
And by the way, the resemblance is striking anyway.
It is. Yeah. Greg's tall too. Do you know he played college basketball?
I assumed he was a college athlete because he's very tall and seemingly physically fit. So yeah.
Yeah. He's a jump shooter. I think he was a small forward or big guard. But anyway, I digress.
I can believe it. All right. Reach us on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL, at Caplan NFL, and of course at Inside Birds. And please, if you're whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, leave us a 5-star review on it. Ask a question, and we will answer it. All right. Without further ado, let's get into cornerbacks. Tier 1, Adam, is cornerbacks are called being on the island, right? And there's really 2 guys who I think are going to be gone before the Eagles pick at 21, but you never know. But I think that you and I both expect that. Obviously, Jeffrey Okudah is the guy who gets the most attention. Ohio State kid, 6'1", 205 pounds, 4'8". And then the Florida kid, who I'm actually a little bit more intrigued by the Florida kid, CJ Henderson, 6 foot tall, 204, ran a 4.38. You're not going to find a whole lot of things that you dislike about both of these guys, but they're not necessarily, from my homework, Adam, prototypes either. They're a little bit different.
Well, Okudah is the better. Jeffrey Okudah from Ohio State is the better pure cover corner. CJ Henderson from Florida is a better athlete. Mm-hmm. They're both man cover corners. They're both fluid. Okudah, I mean, if the Lions don't take him at 3, folks, Lion fans who are listening, if they don't take him, I'd be surprised, because as much as they like the Penn State kid from last year, the guy was a 5th-round pick. You're taking a big leap of faith. They're not good at corner anyway to begin with the trade of Slay. I'd be stunned if they don't take him. So Okudah, Geoff, is a kid that is good in every single way. He runs well enough. I mean, 4.48 at the combine is fine. It's solid. He is a man press corner. You can play him in zone, but you want to play him in press. He's a better athlete than you think. To me, he's an outside corner. He's not going to play man. I mean, he's not going to play slot. He can play it, but you want him playing outside. This kid's a terrific football player. I mean, if the Lions trade out, obviously someone would be trying to trade up for him. I don't see anyone else a team would trade up for unless they're trying to get a quarterback. But to me, Okudah's got to be that guy at number 3.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to wind up going top 5, Adam, just based on the needs that you mentioned. I know the Giants signed Bradbury, but it's not like the guy they picked last year, DeAndre Baker, didn't have a great year. I don't expect them to pick a corner, but it wouldn't shock me.
Well, they need a DN. Yeah, they
need a pass rusher badly, and they also need an offensive lineman, and there are going to be a lot of good ones at that spot too. The Dolphins are not a team that you would think will be on. They've got the 2 highest paid corners.
Oh, they're not drafting corner. No chance. Yeah, they're going either quarterback. They need a wide receiver. They need an offensive lineman.
Right. So you look at 7, 8, 9 from Carolina, Arizona to Jacksonville. Any one of the I wouldn't say Cleveland at 10. I think Denzel.
They wouldn't. But yeah, you're right though. Jacksonville, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick Peterson's getting up there, but he's still a very good football player. They're looking to extend his contract. The Panthers, absolutely. The Chargers, they just got Chris Harrison there, so it's not really a need. They've got Hayward, but Okudah is the best guy because he's just. I've asked people, does he have any real flaws? Could he have more turnovers? Okay, you want to. I don't know. See, the thing is, you're product sometimes of the scheme that you play in.
Mm-hmm.
When people complain about, well, we're not a high turnover rate, I'm not sure if I agree with that, because it's your product of that scheme that you play. This guy's a press man corner. He's really good at it. That's what you want.
Right. No, I agree with you. I'm going to read you one thing that I got from a longtime AFC personnel guy. And I like this guy who I spoke to in particular because I find him to be a little bit harsher than others, and not intentionally, but I purposely asked this guy about these top rated guys. Give me what you don't like about them instead of everything that you like, because, when it comes to the top 5, 10 guys, you kind of hear a lot about what they're good at. And the one thing that stuck out to me that he said about Okudah is just that I think he has some weird movement. From an athletic standpoint, I think you mentioned this too, that maybe Henderson is the better athlete of the two. Was that what you said earlier today?
Right. Though I'll tell you what, Okuda's pretty good. I mean,
The measurables are going to be there, but he's talking about from a tape watching
fluidity.
Fluidity.
Right. I would say that Henderson's a little bit more athletic, but man, this kid Okuda's plenty athletic. Yeah.
Let me read you this quote real quick. He just says, "I just think there are some things that can get him caught up in the league," meaning the NFL. He does a good job of keeping everything in front of him, but in the league, he's not always going to be able to do that. And I don't think he's a quick twitch guy. So I thought that was a pretty interesting remark, because he did feel that Henderson had better, more quick twitcher movement than Okuda. But he did praise Okuda. He thinks he's tough as nails. He thinks that you're not going to find a more, tough, willing tackler, a guy really who can do everything for you than Okuda. He just felt that he can be a little grabby at times and does better when it's the actions in front of you than when you're 20, 25 yards running with a receiver and the ball's in the air, which a lot of corners, to be fair, in this league struggle with, even the good ones.
Yeah, I would say with Okuda, he's a plug and play. He's starting week 1. Even with no offseason, I think he's smart enough from what I'm told that he'll be able to handle it. Henderson is an interesting player. Let's move to CJ Henderson. CJ Henderson is not most corners are not as tall as he is. He's 6 foot and 3/4 of an inch, just under 6'1", 204. Ran it great for combine in terms of 4.39. You don't find corners usually as fast as he is.
Right.
He's really athletic. He can move. He's another guy you're not going to see a ton of turnovers. Every once in a while, he loses location of where the ball is when it's in the air. Loses awareness. That's one of the knocks on him. He's a very good football player. He's another start week 1 guy. Again, this is my top tier based on several conversations I've had with people. He's just ready to roll. He's just not. I don't see how he gets out of the top 10. If you need a corner, Geoff, and we just outlined who needs corners, I don't see how he gets out of the top 10.
Right, and then you move on to. Well, do you think Henderson also goes top 10 or just Okuda?
Yeah. No, I was talking about Henderson.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. I just can't imagine. It's such a drop off after these two guys.
Right. I mean, again, you go to the 7 to 12 realm of this draft with Carolina, Arizona, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Jets, Raiders. That's what I just named.
One. It's funny. Every team you just talked about needs a corner and a receiver. That's just very odd.
Right. So I agree with you. I don't see Henderson. The one thing about Henderson, by the way, when you talk about something the Eagles have lacked for a long while, and this applies to Okuda as well, but the ability to flip the hips and run down the field, these guys got it.
Flipping hips. Flip
your hips and run.
By the way, in cover 3, it's not as necessary because you're only covering an area and you give off. Like the Seattle corners when they were at their best, like Richard Sherman, he didn't have to flip. He didn't have to run all the way downfield because he'd hand off to someone else. But these two guys are man cover corners. And by the way, Lions play a high percentage of man. Let's transfer to the Eagles. When the Eagles, we'll get to some of their targets, but what the Eagles, when they played a lot of man and when Schwartz trusted them, these asked them to cover a lot of field and they couldn't do it. So we'd have to back off and play more zone. This year, the Eagles are going to draft a corner, and they're going to get a guy who can play man. It's obviously not going to be one of these two guys because they're not going to get high enough to get him. But they've got these teams that play man. It's hard to find a lot of guys who could play man at a high level, but we're going to get into those guys because they're coming right up.
There we go. Before we get into the second tier, and by the way, I think you and I both agree Okuda and Henderson most likely off the board before the Eagles pick.
Oh, hell yeah. Not even, I don't think. I'd be shut. Now, Henderson, barring some crazy stuff, if teams start reaching for receivers or if something crazy happens, he can go at like 15 or 16. But I just don't see it.
The higher Okuda goes, the better for Henderson, because when Okuda gets off the board, if it's 3, then the next best corner becomes Henderson, and he's got a really good chance to hit that target zone that we talked about, somewhere between 6 and 12.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so let's move on to tier 2. Before we do that, I want to tell you about our friends at DraftKings. No sports, no problem. DraftKings has an endless amount of casino games to play from the comfort and safety of your home. And right now, all first-time casino players on DraftKings Sportsbook can get up to $200 to play risk-free for the first 24 hours after downloading and signing up. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and find the casino games in the top navigation bar to start playing. Games? You want games? Choose from slots, blackjack, roulette, live dealer games, and more. DraftKings is a legal, safe, and secure gaming app. You can deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Plus, DraftKings has new promotions every day, so be sure to check the app daily. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code ITB to play up to $200 of casino games risk-free. That's promo code ITB to play up to $200 risk-free for your first 24 hours of casino play on DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, the second tier. I don't know the way you wrote it, Adam, when we kind of shared notes, if you felt that it's just any one of these guys is the top or that these three stick out. But we've got Christian Fulton from LSU, Trevon Diggs from Alabama, and Jalen Johnson from Utah. Three really interesting names for different reasons. And I'll do this. I mean, because I looked at your tier three, and you don't have AJ Terrell in there, but
he would. That's what. Yeah, I didn't. By the way, I didn't list every guy for tier three. I just wanted to. I didn't want to do an hour and a half show because I don't want to. It's too.
No,
long.
No. That's fine. Yeah, I think for the purposes of say the Eagles, because a lot of teams, as you mentioned, play different schemes. My intel is that this guy would thrive in a Jim Schwartz type of scheme.
So he play man.
For the Eagles, he's better because he can acquit himself well on the outside compared to somebody else who's more of a zone corner.
Right, because the thing for teams that play zone, Miami plays zone, Eagles play zone. Lions and Eagles and Dolphins all play man. They like to play a lot more man, and clearly with what the Dolphins just did, with Byron Jones, they're playing a lot of man.
Right.
And obviously with the kid on the other corner who got his contract extended. I would say that, and you're going to hear as we go through this, the next 4 or 5 guys are all guys who are probably going to play a lot of man the next level. The reason why teams would rather play man than zone unless they're a cover 3 team or cover, because that's the way you would like to play against the better receivers. But if you don't have the personnel, you got to play zone. That's kind of what we're seeing lately.
So of these guys, and by the way, just to illustrate the point, a guy like Damon Arnett, the other Ohio State corner, I've been told is a way better zone corner, and he's not going to play well in man. So we wouldn't put him in tier 2 or tier 3 for the Eagles, at least, because if you can't hold your own on the outside, then you can't play in Jim Schwartz's system. So,
exactly. Yeah.
And we've seen that.
Right. You're really not going to draft a zone corner this early. They got to be able to play man. Today's NFL, Geoff, so much more man. And unfortunately, some of these teams are, like the Giants last season, their corner play was so, let's face it, wasn't good enough. Now their hope is because they got Bradbury that they're going to be able to play more man. And this is what happens when you get better players. You have choices. If you were the Eagles last season, their corner play was so bad sometimes, as Howie Roseman said, it was GM in his media briefing. He was sick and tired of seeing the ball go over the corners' heads.
Absolutely.
And that's why he made the trade for Darius Slay.
He wasn't alone. I know a lot of Eagles fans felt the same way.
Hell yeah. True. It's all true.
So of the 3 names here, I'm going to start with the one we have listed third, Jalen Johnson, only because in the homework I've done here and talking with 2 personnel people on him, he recently had a labrum surgery last month. If he didn't have that surgery, they feel like this is the guy who, if there were no medical questions, could have a chance to sneak in to the back end of that, or if there were a run on corners, could be a first round. And not that Fulton or Diggs can't, they could also be, but I felt like the guys I was talking to really liked what Jalen Johnson brings to the table from his ability to cover, play man, play zone, tackle, do everything. It's just that this injury that he had, the labrum surgery and everything going on, and not everybody being able to have all the access that they need to check guys out, one-on-one may hurt him.
Yeah, he's a really good football player. The labrum surgery, look, he's going to be able to play this season, and he hopefully will be ready for week 1, whatever week 1 is. But it's a little concerning he's had the surgery.
Right.
The only reason I say that is because I've talked to teams about this. His name has come up. He is a really good player. He's really smart. Also good with deflections. The only question is, when will he be ready and will be a week 1 starter? I don't know that, because if he misses the entire offseason, or he's limited all in training camp, that does lower his value a little bit, because if you're drafting him early, you probably have the feeling that you need him to start.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on the way that, if you're a team that's not worrying about it and it's drafting like you should be drafting him, you're not too worried about year one. You want him, you want to be your starting corner for 6 to 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have to worry so much about that. It just depends on how you look at the player.
Should be noted that Andrew DeCecco, who writes for our InsideTheBirds.com website, in his second mock draft, Eagles mock draft 2.0, he had the Eagles taking Jalen Johnson, I believe, in the second round. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Oh, 53. Right.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing with him. Really good size, 5'11" and 7/8, 193. Yep. Here's the thing that now he ran a 4.5. He plays better, I'm told, than that speed. Here's what's impressive about this guy. Despite needing surgery, he still lifted, and he had 15 at 225. That's incredibly impressive.
That is amazing.
Why is he with a bad shoulder? It was a stunner to me, but you got to give this kid credit that this is a great story.
Also, sometimes we talk about who you face in your competition, right? By playing at Utah, he went up against both Laviska Shenault Jr., right, from Colorado, and Ayuk, our favorite wide receiver from Arizona State. So I was told that his tape against those two wide receivers is good. So I think that's a kind of a feather in the cap. And if he can check out medically, now I can see him slipping into the third round because of this surgery. I mean, it was just last month, and you're not having any rookie camps and OTAs. I mean, I think this is going to impact guys with medicals, but even more so if you just recently had the surgery. So we'll see what happens to him, but he could be a steal for someone if he goes late 2, early 3.
Yeah, and it's a right shoulder labrum. So yeah, we'll see. I don't think he gets out of the second because he's just so gifted. Mm-hmm. But again, it's how patient you're going to be able to be with him.
All right. Now Diggs, Alabama, 6'1", 205. He didn't run the 40 if I'm correct on that, right?
Yes, he did not.
Fits what Jim does. He can hold his own on the outside. The only thing I always worry about Alabama corners, I just, do they hold up in the NFL?
There was this, it wasn't just corner, but you're right. What Jeff's talking about, there is a run of Alabama players who were having trouble at the next level at the NFL because they were coming in beat up physically. And yeah, who was the kid the Jets drafted? I was just
thinking, what was that kid? Was it D. Milner? Is that
Milner? Yes, good call by you. Yes, you're absolutely right. He was the one who had all these surgeries prior to coming in. Right. He had a very short career. He was a short contract guy. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Diggs is another man cover corner. He's got really good size. He's going to play man at the next level. He's going to play outside. You could play him in, but he's a press man corner. You could play him off coverage. He's really good. You love the. I would say he's no worse than the fourth corner.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's anywhere from 3 or 4. Yeah, could teams look at him differently?
Mm-hmm.
He's a really, really good corner, and this is why I said earlier, Geoff, to start this off, that this cornerback group, at least it's a little bit better in the first 5 or 6 than I anticipated. Because I'd heard at the combine it wasn't as good, but when I'm talking to coaches who once they dug in after the season was over, they like him a lot better than I thought.
Here's an interesting comment I got from the AFC personnel guy. He says, I like him and I like what he does for what he could do in Jim's defense. The one thing is he needs people around him. He didn't say Diggs is a bad kid or a character risk, but he felt like that Diggs is not the type of player to kind of walk into a secondary and own it, even if he's a first round or a high second round pick. And he mentioned he felt that if Malcolm Jenkins were still on the team, that would be a good type of guy to mentor Diggs. And he said, I don't know if Mills is the type of guy you want mentoring Trayvon Diggs. You'd want someone a little bit more veteran, a little bit more, who comes off as a little more savvy. Not that Mills is a bad kid either, but I just think it was an interesting note that he felt like Diggs needs a little bit of an environment to succeed.
All right. I'm going to move to the Jacksonville Jaguars and Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. For those fans who like the Seahawks and Jaguars are playing cover 3, Diggs could play off. Play handoff coverage in cover 3. Eagles also, because of how bad their corners were last year, played a lot of cover 3. More teams typically will go to cover 3. Anything where you can hand off when your corners aren't good enough. But again, the Eagles would rather go with man if they have the players. Trayvon Diggs is a good football player. He should go no worse than like 40th. I still think he sneaks into the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you play Jaguars cover 3, Seattle cover 3, any of these teams are playing that Seattle secondary cover 3, this guy could play it.
I agree with you. I think he's going to be the third corner to go. I know Christian Fulton is right up there, and we'll talk about him in a minute.
And by the way, real quick,
uh-huh.
Okay, just want to add, I forgot to add this. He is one of the tallest corners for this draft, 6'1" and 3/8, 205.
I was just about to nail that. That's why I think he probably is going to get the leg up over Fulton, who's a 5'11" guy. And obviously.
So you think he'll go over him, huh?
I tend to think Diggs, the Alabama pet, not that LSU is, I mean, listen, LSU is a defensive back factory, but I just from my own guesswork and what teams meet and listening to, the guys I spoke to, it's neck and neck. I just tend to think Diggs might go higher.
Okay.
But Fulton, hey, my notes on Fulton are he's a really good cornerback. He tackles well, good speed. The only thing that sets him back a little bit in one guy's eyes where he has short arms that at the position than you would ideally like.
Interesting player, man. Very interesting player. Very interesting player. Again, you could see, Geoff, in this draft, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 corners go in the top 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then, man, there's a drop off. It just, it's funny, and we'll get to Danzer, the kid from Mississippi State, and Fulton, we just mentioned. It just depends on the scheme you run, because scheme means a lot. It's not something we talk about enough at corner, but it does mean a lot at the next level.
Absolutely. So do you think Fulton goes ahead of Diggs or vice versa? Because I think what we were getting at is that he's 6'1", Diggs, and this is a league where a lot of times when you're on the outside, you're facing those receivers who are 6'1", 6'2", and sometimes taller and way athletic. The Mike Evanses of the world.
Yes, he's 6'1" and 3/8, so he's just under 6'2". Here's the problem, though. He didn't run at the combine. You need to know what he runs. That we'll see if that's held against him. It shouldn't, because his tape is so good, but we'll see.
All right, let me ask you this before we get to tier 3. I'm going to propose a scenario for you, and I know that the answer can change in a week or two as we get more intel, but let's say the top 2 corners, Okudah and Henderson, are off the board, and the top 4 wide receivers, Ruggs, Judy, Lamb, and Jefferson, are off the board when the Eagles pick at 21. Do they go wide receiver there? Do they go Diggs or Fulton, or do they try to move back a little bit? What do you think?
You mention Jefferson or Rager?
Yeah, I said the top 4. No, I didn't. I said Rager's there, but Jefferson's gone.
Oh, they got to go Rager. I mean, they would go Rager just because he's exactly what they want in speed. Mm-hmm. It's just he's just under 5'11", but the guy his tape is like really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I'm not sure on the value yet of where he should be going. I'm trying to nail that down. I know people are asking me, what do you think the Eagles will do?
Mm-hmm.
There's a group of 5 or 6 players, and Geoff just outlined a bunch of them. I'm just trying to nail down from talking to so many teams as I can. I'm going to be talking about 20 teams in about the next week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get an idea of where these teams think these players should go. The value. That's how you nail down these picks. That's my 21 years of covering this stuff. When I get to my best people, they're going to give me the exact area where they think it, because certain guys are really more accurate than other people I speak with.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm trying to answer your question. I'm trying to figure out where is Jefferson's round targets? Is it 25 to 45? Is it 20 to 35? I need to know that.
Right.
Over 32 teams. I need to know what, as they do media in all these markets, I want to know, because they're going to ask me, what do you think of our team?
Mm-hmm.
You and I do an Eagles show. Well, I want to know, is Rager 21 to 40? Or is he 20? Could he even go higher? Is he, because the Vikings, by the way, need receivers.
Right.
They're a little bit past the Eagles, but the Jaguars could use a receiver. Is it 20 to 35 or to 31? I need to nail that down. I want to make sure that we're not putting a guy higher than he should be. And
sure.
I'll know that. And that's what I'm working on, folks. I know you keep asking me. We just gave you what we think. Geoff asked a great question. If all these guys are off the board, who would they go with? Well, it's obvious to me. If you and I are picking, you got it. And I know that they like this player that you mentioned, Rager.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of work on him. We mentioned this 3 weeks ago, but they've also done a lot of work on a lot of these receivers, particularly the top 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because when you're picking 21, you have to have a group of players. You can't focus in on one guy. You got a group of 5 or 6 guys that you like, and then you go to your next tier. That's folks. They have the horizontal grade and they have the vertical grade. And when you have the group of if you got a group of 7 guys, 6 guys all have a grade of 7 out of 10. Most likely you're gonna have one of those 2 guys at 21. If you're picking 31, like the Niners, you better have a group of 12 to 15 guys.
Right. Got to have a bigger cluster.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we'll move on to tier 3. First, want to thank our friends at PHL Sports Nation as they continue to enhance the fan experience with all their coverage of Philadelphia's teams, the Eagles, the Sixers, the Flyers, the Phillies. They've got podcasts. They have great content. They continue to churn it out even during this sports drought that we're all going through right now, just like we are. So make sure you head on over to phlsportsnation.com. Check out all their great work. And right about now, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. The Earn Your Leisure podcast, hosted by Rashard Bilal and Troy Millings, examines the latest trends in finance. Listen as the duo interviews entrepreneurs from various industries as they break down their business models and share some of their hardships and triumphs that they've experienced along the way. Want to learn about the real estate game? Unclear how the stock market works? They gotcha. Interested in starting a truck company, vending machine business, or investing in the mobile home market? Then check them out as they've got you covered. Earn Your Leisure is a college business class mixed with pop culture. So if you want to become better equipped in business, head over to Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and follow the Earn Your Leisure podcast today so you never miss an episode. All right, Adam, let's get into tier 3. You never know where these guys are going to wind up because, as we talked about, you never know how the run of corners is going to go in the draft. But we've got Noah, and I'm going to do my best here. I think it's Igbinoghene. Igbinoghene from Auburn.
You did better than I did. Igbinoghene. Yeah, I think that's it. This kid is really this is one of the most intriguing corners of the draft. I didn't do a ton of work on corner at the combine, but this kid was mentioned to me.
Mm-hmm.
He played, if I'm not mistaken, he started as a receiver.
Right.
He's played corner for 2 years. This kid's upside, he's so fluid. I'm going to be very interested to see where he goes in the draft because here's the thing, Geoff. I would say he needs further development. He's 5'10" and 3/8, 198.
Right.
Ran a 4.48, which is fine. It's solid. You want to see more from him because he only played corner for 2 years. You're going to need to bring him along slowly because you can't ask him, particularly with this offseason, to go in and start right away. But he is so intriguing. I think third round, may go second because he's athletic. This is a favorite of a lot of coaches I spoke with. I just don't know if you take him, where are you going to line him up at slot, outside? My sense is the guy's tape studies I spoke to says outside corner. But he might, because he's so athletic and he's not super tall, he might be able to play inside. This kid, folks, because it's going to be funny, like on television when when he gets drafted, for people trying to pronounce his name. Just remember this kid. He's from Auburn. This kid's got a lot of ability, and he's one of, like, if you think that Chenault, the receiver from Colorado's the most intriguing receiver, this kid at corner is extremely intriguing.
Yeah, I'm going to try it again. Igbinoghene. All right.
Good. Nice job. Yeah, I think that's right.
He's going to go in the second round, Adam.
You think?
And I'll tell you why.
Okay, go.
Played in the SEC, ran a 4.48 corner. All right. That's all you need to know. Okay. Am I being like hyperbolic? Yeah, obviously. But you're talking, as you mentioned, there's a big drop off from guys who can run and play at that position after you get out of the top 6 or 7. And we named before Igbenogany, we talked about 5 cornerbacks. There's no way that 2 rounds are passing without more than 5 corners.
Well, we didn't.
Going.
Okay,
but no, I know there's more in tier 3 that we're going to mention, but the kid ran a 4.48 at Auburn and played in the SEC. So yeah. I tend to think that for all the reasons you just mentioned, the upside that he's going to go at least in the second round. Yeah, right. I would think the second round.
I would say, second or third. We don't have time tonight to do A.J. Terrell and Bryce Hall and Meek Robertson. Those guys are second or third round guys. We couldn't do an hour and a half show. These are the guys that I had information on. And then after him, well, Jeff Gladney, the kid from TCU, it just so happened that I asked Denzel Mims in our interview with him. It was the toughest corner you went up against.
That was amazing, by the way.
How about that? Yeah, how about that? So Jeff Gladney is that guy.
Gladney is a guy who is getting a lot of love. And by the way, that's my dog barking in the background for anybody who might hear. So apologies for that. But he's not happy on Easter, I guess. But 5'10", and which is not incredible. It's not like, what's the guy? Avante Maddox territory. It's a little short, but I guess
5'10" and a quarter, 191.
5'10" and a quarter, 191. I had an AFC guy tell me it was more like in the 180, like high 180s than 190. So I guess that's what he measured at, but maybe played during the season.
Gotcha.
A little lighter than that. And that was a concern for the guy who I talked to about him. He likes him. He likes him a lot, but he just wonders at 188 or even 190 if he can hold up in the NFL on the outside full term, 16 games or 17 now, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, you're right. He isn't super strong, but he's super competitive. 4-year starter. Probably will transition to slot, which is why I think he's a 3rd round pick. Maybe he's a 2nd round pick if you think he could play outside. You love guys who've started for that long. He was a Senior Bowl guy. He's really a good football player. I love that Denzel Mims talked. I guess Denzel said he knew him growing up. Maybe they played against each other. In addition, obviously, to playing in college against each other. Okay.
Right. If he's really suited for the nickel and the Eagles determine that he's probably a better inside than an outside, then you almost think that he's just not really going to be for the Eagles because they got enough slot corners.
Right. They don't need him. Yeah. The kind of team that would take him sees him as you could play both because he can. And you don't necessarily need him as a starter right away. He might be he's really a number 2 corner or slot corner. You probably because he's not super big, as Jeff talked about. Maybe you play him in zone, but he's a good football player, and you like the high character. I mean, this is a guy that you feel good about.
Definitely. All right, let's go to a polarizing guy, Troy Pride out of Notre Dame. Ran a 4.4. I think he blew it up at the combine, if I'm not mistaken.
Senior Bowl too. He's another guy like Denzel Mims was thought to be a mid-3rd round pick. He's a high character kid. I met the parents, by the way, at the just ironically, I just happened to meet them in the lobby there. But he is a kid that was just seen to be a above average corner, maybe a little bit better than above average to good, but not. The way that he played, he was so competitive and played with such urgency, practiced with such urgency at the Senior Bowl. And then he had a really good combine, Jeff. He won't get out of the 3rd round, has a chance to go in the back of the 2nd round.
I would
he's
agree.
The kind of guy that some of the D-back coaches I talked to said they went back and looked at tape of him because they want to make sure that it doesn't match up with the athletic numbers. That's kind of what happens sometimes when a guy's just better than you thought.
Right, definitely. Now, again, he's almost 6 feet. He's 5'11" and a half. So he's almost 6 feet tall and he ran a 4.4. So to your point, athletically, he checks a lot of boxes. And because of that, I could see him going either 2nd or 3rd round. But I got to tell you this. This was a guy who the AFC personnel guy I spoke to felt very strongly about. And I'll read you the quotes because when I say felt strongly, he didn't feel strongly that Troy Pride is going to be a very good player. He says, this guy scares the bleep out of me. Every time he goes on the field, I'd be nervous that he doesn't step up in a big moment. He questioned the toughness and the physicality of Troy Pride's game. He says he's got all the movements, but you just don't see him make a lot of plays. Yeah, and to paraphrase, he almost said, maybe it's my fault that I expect him to make more plays because you look at the player and you look at the position and the big games he's played in and you think he's going to make a play and he doesn't. But it just keep all that into consideration when you talk about a guy who blows it, does great at the workouts in the Senior Bowl, but didn't necessarily show it all on tape.
Yeah, he was inconsistent. There's no question about it. He was more or less he started games before his junior year, but he really came on as a junior, and a senior obviously was still very good, but just too inconsistent, I think, to go in the first 2 rounds. I think he's a rock solid 3rd round pick. This is why when we do tiers, I put him in the 3rd tier simply because just too inconsistent. I'm going to be fascinated to see where he goes because I think it's playing into what you were talking about, the guy you spoke to. It just depends on who you speak with, but he really helped himself because he never would have had a chance to go in the 2nd round. I thought it really is quite frankly, a 3rd or 4th round pick for the Senior Bowl. But he did so well and was so competitive. It's kind of like you're saying, well, where was this in college?
Right.
So maybe he's feeling it. Who knows?
Right. So it'll be when that guy gets picked, I think some teams and fans are going to be like, oh, I hope he's the athletic freak of nature that, we saw and not the consistent guy at Notre Dame. Last one we have, we'll talk about is Cameron Dantzler from Mississippi State. Love the size, 6'2", 188, ran a 4.6. So he's not the fastest guy in the world. What do you have on him as far as what scheme you think he'd be best in, Adam?
Long press corner. You could. I think he could trail. He can move for a guy his size. The reason why I put him on our list is he didn't run well. He had a very bad combine for time, 4.64.
Right.
That's going to hurt him. But he is long, and for a guy this long, he could flip his hips. He does not have long speed. That's why he doesn't go in the first 2 rounds. But this kid is a man cover corner. He's got to get his hands on you. I feel bad that he ran a 4.64. It's too bad because this guy's a good player, man.
Does he play faster, do you think, than 4.64?
Probably 4.5s. Yeah, good. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, but that 4.64 because he didn't have a opportunity to beat that time in a pro day or work out for a team privately. It's a damn shame.
Right.
This kid's a good cover corner, man. I think he fits in Seattle's system, though there is, obviously they're cover 3 with some man principles.
Yeah.
It's just a shame. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens here. Does he go in round 3 or 2? Because the time's not good enough. Maybe he drops to the 3rd, but he's way better than his listed time.
Yeah, like it's an interesting dynamic here. We talk about Troy Pride, who had a great time, but was very inconsistent at Notre Dame, versus Cameron Dantzler, who had a bad combine, which happens, didn't run well, but his tape is fairly decent. And obviously, again, he plays in the SEC. He goes up against some of the fastest, twitchiest guys that there are in the game. And if the tape says he can handle his own, you wonder which one, when it comes down to having to decide between the two or where you're going to put Dantzler, it's obviously going to vary depending on what teams feel they see on tape.
Exactly. Yeah, he's an interesting case study. So before we get out of here, Geoff, I know for the Eagle fans that are listening and wondering, when are we going to put out who we think they're going to take? I don't do it until I feel like I can do it, when I feel like I know. And I always narrow it down to 2 or 3 guys. Geoff earlier in our show listed like 6 or 7 guys. If they're off the board, well, who would they go with? I mean, there's really no one else left. I mean, who I would consider. And with Rager, I mean, I think he's going. In fact, I know he's going in the first round. I just don't know where. I just don't know how he's going to go. So it's too early for me to know.
Right.
This is where I nail it down before the draft. And what we're probably going to do, because I know we're going to do something pretty significant during draft week,
right,
whether it's going to be in a chat room or live. We're going to lay it out for you. And I'm going to do it for the Eagles and probably 4 or 5 other teams, but specifically because it's called Inside the Birds and we do a lot of Eagle stuff. I'll get it for you folks, but I'm not to the point a week and a half till I know. And by the way, their teams finalize their draft board. This is where they know their medical stuff, their final medical stuff, and they start, okay, we're narrowing it down to 2 or 3 players, and that's kind of what we're going to do over the next week.
Right. And I think I'd said it in the last podcast, Adam. It was almost impossible to answer that question because this week that just wrapped up was where the coaches really got their involvement in the meetings. Correct. And their input in. And so to have tried to answer the question of, what cluster of guys or what 1 or 2 or 3 guys you really think the Eagles are targeting at 21 before the coaches have even had their input into it, would have been, I think, just kind of like throwing something against the wall at that point. So
Right.
I think you make it a great point. You got to let the process play itself out before we can really get down to like a small cluster.
The one
of guys.
thing I would one thing I would add to that would be if whoever they like at receiver or whoever they've nailed it down to is gone, I think it's corner. And that would, to me, if they stay, again, that's if they stay at 21, I think it's corner. And then the sleeper pick would be defensive end, but I don't know if the value is there.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
They definitely need, because they're thinking, remember, folks, they're done going for it for, not that they're not going to try to win a Super Bowl every year, but remember, Roseman said the window's been kind of closed to that. Okay, we're doing the way that he talked about, they had a 3-year window. Well, that window's closed, but they're not rebuilding at all because their team's pretty good. They're retooling. And to retool for the future, they absolutely need one more corner. They're going to get a corner in this draft, whether it's the first round, third or fourth round. They're getting a corner because they really don't know who they're out. They could say all they want about Avonte Maddox, and I know they love him, but they would love to have one more corner, and they're going to get one. It's just a matter of where it's going to be.
And you know me, I'm in the get yourself a wide receiver, a corner, and don't forget safety. And we'll talk about safety.
Oh, that's his position. That's what you want. I get it.
That is the position I've been screaming about. We'll talk about safety, I guess, with Greg Cassell when we do our next pod. So that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds with Adam Caplan, myself, and my barking dog in the background. It's the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. We want to thank our friends at 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Find his work at Sports Talk with Broads on YouTube and at Broads81 on Twitter. And please check out our Inside the Birds YouTube page and InsideTheBirds.com for more content. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.
If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.